So where did the African American men in Merrifield work?
Quite a few of the guys worked for the Washington Gas Light Company. It was called Washington Gas Light.
How did they get there?
Most of them drove. They had a car, or if they didn't drive, they always had a rider with them. Yeah, because everybody didn't have a car, you know.
Yeah.
And that was right. I guess they started working after the war, you know. My aunt and them moved to Arlington at one time. No, from Merrifield they moved to Arlington because during the war, tires were kind of hard to get, and sugar and stuff like that was hard to get. I remember seeing sugar stamps and meat stamps. They used to issue those out, and a lot of people were very careful not to lose them, you know. So so my aunt moved, but they moved to close to Arlington, so that he could get to work to the gas company, you know.
And so that's how they made their money.
Right, working for the gas company.
Yeah.
You know, back at that time, the black men got what you consider dirty work. They did not have the equipment that they've got today. And the law is now, you're in a ditch, it's supposed to be secured. One guy in my family, he was hurt in the 70s, I guess, and he was crushed in that, but the doctor wouldn't sign his papers for him. But nowadays, when you're in a ditch, it's got to be secured. But the black men were, it was pretty rough for them. The riots in 1968, that was a public apology from the gas light company. We are sorry the way we have treated our Negroes, they said. I heard that on the radio. We're going to try to do better. I did hear that, and that'll always stick with me.
That was in 1968.
A little after 68 or a little after 68, you know. Well, let's say 68. Yeah.
Now, did you go to the March on Washington?
No, I did not. No, I was working night shift then. You know.
Did you remember it?
I remember just about everything.
So how did that make you feel when you were thinking about that?
A lot of people were up in the air about it. It turned out wonderful, I think. It wasn't a lot of you white people thought people were going to go down there and just raise a ruckus and just destroy the city, but it wasn't that. It was, you know, Martin Luther King and various dignitaries. They was trying to show people that black people weren't savages like everybody thought, you know. And they would just want equal rights. That's what people were looking for, want to be treated. Even in the government, black people did not get the same as white people did at one time. Mm-hmm. And it was a white man that did see that, they changed that in the government. I remember hearing all about that. Because my aunt and a lot of the black people got jobs at the Pentagon, but it didn't pay much. I think Jesse Wright said that they was either making 25 cents an hour or 50 cents an hour. They may be making 50 cents an hour.
And what were they doing, janitorial service?
Yeah, right. That's what they did then. Right. That's what they were doing. So they just wanted to, you know, be equal with everybody else.
Yeah. So during that time, you would hear white people be concerned about the march?
Well, I was in Springfield at the time, working at a restaurant. A lot of the people thought that people were going to, a lot of the white people who didn't know anything about blacks thought that they were going to go down there and burn down the town. But the reason that riot broke out in 1968, Martin Luther King was assassinated. And, you know, people, you know, in the city, there were a lot of poor people. And I remember seeing a scene I'll never forget on television. Down in Tennessee, these black people registered to vote. And after they found they registered to vote, and it was snowing in Tennessee, well, all white people weren't bigots, you know. A lot of people came over and helped them to pack up. The man kicked them off the farm and helped them move, you know.
So he kicked them off the farm because they registered?
Because they had registered to vote, yeah. Yeah, people, you just can't say white people this, that, and the other, you know. But a lot of white people, to be honest with you, a lot of white people help the blacks, right? Some right beside them. That's why a lot of they don't ever tell a story about how they were hurt or anything. Their houses were burned down. They don't mention that. How they were probably shot at, you know.
Well, talk about the Dunns and Mr. Hogue. They were white. Hogan. They were whites that lived.
They were white. Yeah, they were farmers.
Okay,
yeah.
They helped the blacks, you said.
Yeah, right. Yeah, best I remember was hog killing time. Now, Mr. Dunn, he and my father were friends, and like I say, I didn't know much about it no more than he was like a farmer, and he always got a new truck every so often. He would sell it to a black guy here in Merrifield a couple of times. You know, I do remember that. You know, and Mr. Hogan, I never did know what his work. He came from Roanoke area, Virginia. You know. And he, like I say, he and my father were very good friends, you know. And he, like I say, hog killing time. And he enjoyed sitting at the table with us, eating and everything. He was very, you know, very nice person, you know.
Did your grandparents or your parents ever register to vote? Did they ever have?
They did, yeah, right. They did. They registered.
Did they talk about having problems to register?
No, they didn't. I think Virginia tried to be a little more liberal to a certain degree, you know. They didn't want to sound like Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi, you know. My grandfather had a sister that went to Georgia, she and her husband, and they went down there to work. From what I understand, they worked her out in the field and her husband worked in the house. So she got so ill, she came back to Washington and went to Freeman's Hospital, and that's where she died. I didn't know anything about her husband, you know. Nobody ever mentioned him, but that's what I was told. They went down to Georgia and got in a living job. And she worked so hard down there, they killed her, they said.
Wow.
Yeah.
You also talk about hearing about a lynching off of
14th Street Bridge. Yeah, I've seen that written in a paper or magazine a couple of times. But it probably could have been somebody from D.C. or somebody from Arlington at that time. Maybe somebody from Arlington, you know.
But you don't know of any mob violence or lynchings in the
No,
Merrifield area?
No.
Falls Church?
No, that was a story that somebody paid somebody to burn somebody's house down in Falls Church. I don't know why. You know, sometimes people would do a thing like that, but I never really heard any hardly anything that was quite noticeable. Now, in 1955, Miss Mamie Phillips. Did you ever meet her? Miss Mamie Phillips she was an activist. She used to speak up in the church. Says she was welcome everywhere she went. The white people welcomed her, and they asked her to get people to come over to their convention meeting or whatever it was. It was community meetings, but a lot of black folks, they says, well, I don't think I'm ready for that yet or whatever. But Miss Mamie Phillips, she tried to get people coming. She explained that the people weren't going to hurt them, and that they wanted people to come so that they could work toward a resolution in race relations. I remember that well. She stayed with my grandparents for a while. She got sick back in the 40s, you know, and they're the only ones that took her in until she got better. Yeah, I remember we used to call her Aunt Mamie.
Now, did she belong to First Baptist of Merrifield?
She did, yeah. Now her husband was Sherman Phillips. That was her first husband. Well, that was his first wife. I don't know, whatever it was. But she was married to. That's how she got the name Phillips. She was married to Sherman Phillips, and she started a house in Williamstown. They did, or she did. But anyway, after she got sick, and my aunt then took it over and bought that place. But yeah, I still remember the day how she asked people to come to these little community things, and or there was mixed, you know, but some of the black people just didn't feel comfortable, you know. I guess it was, you know, so. Was
it fear, you think?
I don't know. Well, sometimes you just ain't quite ready or whatever. And maybe if you're working hard, you don't have time. You got kids, you know. You got to try to keep the family, you know. But some people probably went. Yeah. My grandfather, he may have gone somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there other recollections that you have about the Merrifield area as far as race relations or?
Like I say, Harvey's Hickory Hut, you couldn't go in there, but you had to go around to the window. But my stepfather worked there, and
now, where was Harvey Hickory Hut?
Harvey's Hickory Hut was at Lee Highway and Gallows Road. Well, you remember Taco Bell? It was there in that area.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so you had to go to the back door there.
Right, to the side on the window. Yeah, you couldn't go in there and sit down. He said, my stepfather said Miss Harvey was too fond of black folks. I don't know what George Harvey was like. But eventually she became good friends with Bessie Gaskins.
Okay.
Yeah, she did, yeah.
Who was an icon at Merrifield.
Right, yeah. And I got to think about that, but I guess, you know, you have a change of heart later in life, you know.
Yeah. But no white people, like, terrorized the blacks in the there, or it was just, you just kind of knew your place?
Well, you're kind of right, yeah. And everybody, you had respect for each other, and there was a white guy shot a black guy, but they were friends, drinking buddies. And he shot him and didn't kill him, but you know, they were drinking buddies. You know, they didn't shoot him because he was a black man. You know, just shot him. You know,
because they had been drinking.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you talk about where Fairfax Hospital is. You said you had been told there's a slave cemetery over there?
I wouldn't say it was a slave cemetery. It could have gone way back where maybe my grandmother was out there one time, and my mother said that they were walking and something, I don't know, something happened. I don't know, a spirit or something came over them. And their mother told them that there were slaves buried there. So that probably went on before 1904, most likely. We went way back, you know. But when they dug up the ground, I never heard nobody saying anything, you know.
That they found any
bones or anything like that. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You know.
What are some other things about Maryfield that you remember in Williamstown?
I'm trying to think. Well, we were on the right side of 50. The water on our side, you never got away with drinking one glass. You had two. On the other side, where my grandfather's house was, the water was hard water. Hard water kills the pipes in the house. You know, your copper. You use the copper. And when you wash clothes, it don't foam. No suds. So he had hard water on his side of the road, and we had salt water on our side. Now, my mother was, before Route 50 went through, my mother remembers it. My aunt had a house there, and the state paid her, you know, the right of way. So Route 50 came down from the circle all the way down to Falls Church and further. So my aunt's house was moved, and my grandfather did a wonderful job on it. He could take a chicken house and make something out of it. So anyway, the state paid them, and she lived in that house until they moved to Arlington, I think it was. And like I said, they moved to Arlington because of the gas rationing and everything. But yeah, before 50, my father's land joined my grandfather's land.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they kind of split the land with
Right, with
Route
Route 50. Yeah, right, yeah. My father had 15 acres on that side of Route 50. Yeah.
And that's where you grew up.
Right. And speaking of Javier Road, some of the people say it's Javier Road. It's Javier Road. Javier was a Filipino, dark skinned. He's the first person my father sold land to. And his son just must be 80-some years old. He just passed about a month ago. And I had a picture of the house. It was a rock house. A lot of different people lived in it. I had a picture of the house, but I just don't know where it is. I may have taken it out and didn't put it back where it should have gone. But if I find it, his daughter's living. And Javier had only 2 children, a boy and a girl.
And so that's why the road is named after.
Right, Javier.